I've seen everything the job has to offer in terms of what crimes are committed. It's everything from simple thefts, harassment, right up to the more serious crimes of murder.
It was PC Daniel Stride's experience growing up that prompted a yearning for change in the society around him.
I grew up on a very socially deprived council estate in Ashford, and where there's deprivation, there's crime, and the fear of crime. And whilst you get used to it growing up, and you're living amongst it, it's not something that I enjoyed, and I wouldn't want anyone else to really go through. So I wanted to change that, try and help people where I could. And that's really the reason I became a police officer.
Little did Daniel know, someone from his childhood would come back to haunt him one evening.
No. No. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Daniel and PC Chris Machoek have been crewed together many times and have a strong bond.
We've worked together for a couple of years. He's a tremendous guy, really hard-working police constable. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, always.
He truly understands the job. He truly does his best, for the victims that are out there that we deal with. He's one of the best in the force, really.
I would call Daniel a model officer when it comes to policing. Someone that I have learned a lot through his work, observing him, through his attitude to work, and how he always is prepared for everything. Outside of the job, he's one of the person I would trust with my personal issues. We're good buddies.
On Friday, June the 1st, 2018, Daniel and Chris started their shift at 9 p.m.
So we had just finished our briefing in the police station when we got the call to deploy to a burglary. And burglaries are quite a nasty crime, and it affects people in many ways. So we like to try and catch them in the act, because it's much better if we got the evidence there from ourselves of the people that are committing these crimes. When we got there, we knocked on the door. We didn't get any response at first, but my colleague Chris went to the left of the house.
I went around the building to see whether there was anyone there, but the gate was quite secure. Knocked on the gate and got a response from inside of the house saying that he was the person who called the police. I asked him to come down and open the gate.
When he comes to let them in, Daniel instantly recognises the troubled caller.
It was somebody that lived on the same street as me, growing up when I was a kid for about 17 years on the same street. So I knew this person already.
We looked around. Obviously, the first thing is look for danger, just not to be surprised with anything. We couldn't find absolutely anything. We had a chat with him, found out why he called us. He said that there were noises and he could hear people in the garden, which we've checked again. I've checked the neighboring property. There was absolutely no sign of anyone there.
But we treated him like a true victim, and, as if there was a real burglary there, and see if there was any evidence of that, which we couldn't find.
We started to think that perhaps there is some other issue that we're dealing with.
It started to look like it was more of a mental health episode, that he may be seeing or hearing people in his garden.
He was frantically looking outside in the garden and in the house. I offered to come and help him with search of the house to make sure he was safe, but he refused. He didn't seem to be quite with me at the time.
So we talked to him, we discussed things, and found out that he did suffer from psychosis, which is a mental health condition. He said he was hearing voices, and he confirmed that he had taken about a gram of cocaine, which is quite a substantial amount. His condition was exacerbated by the drugs, really, so he was very, very paranoid. He was very wide-eyed, very erratic in nature, and kept walking about, very fast-paced, in and out of, you know, the communal corridors, into his bedroom, outside. So it was a bit of a concern for us.
We thought that the best thing would be to call mental health assistance. The phone got disconnected through the lack of signal, so I told Daniel I will go outside of the house to get better signal and to call them again. I thought there's something not quite right in here, not necessarily striking me as dangerous to anyone, but just something not right. So I went out to call mental health again, and I was told that this male was not under mental health services, but having considered his reaction to possibly taking drugs, and it was causing him to be in quite distressed situation, I decided to call an ambulance.
While Chris is contacting the ambulance service, the resident leads Daniel upstairs.
His bedroom was on the top floor of the building. It was like a townhouse. It was a multi-occupancy, so he really only had his room with communal rooms as well. His room was quite small, very similar to a police cell, really. He was totally calm. He gave me no concern at that point. I tried communicating with him because he tried to break some of his property, and I thought, well, he's going to regret that. But he didn't really kind of engage back. And the real moment of concern was when he took a TV off of his bedside units and put it on his bed and took out a knife from his bedside drawer and tried stabbing the TV with it, as if he was trying to pry it open to stop whatever he was hallucinating. I was very concerned at that point, and it was a big problem because of the knife aspect. I didn't want him to harm himself, I didn't want him to harm me, but because he hadn't shown me any signs of aggression at that point, it would have been wrong of me to steam in and try and take that knife from him. And I had other considerations. The door opened inwards, so I didn't want to turn my back to somebody with a knife because it was quite a small space. So I decided to try and maintain as much control as I could by approaching him. I asked him to give me the knife.
Let's take the knife off you. Let's take the knife off of you. Get off.
And with both hands, he just tried to drive the knife into me.
No, 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 no. 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 No.
Now, I managed to overcome him on the first occasion. That's when I was able to get in an emergency call to raise awareness to my other colleagues that there was a male with a knife.
No. No.
When I was on the phone to the emergency ambulance services, I could sense my radio buzzer going, which normally comes only through someone pressing the emergency button, and I could hear the address and the call out for male with knife. So I immediately thought, oh, it must be Daniel. Went back into the house, but because it was a two-story house with multiple occupants, I didn't have a clue where they would be in the house. So I called out for Daniel, but I had absolutely no reply. It was complete silence.
Later, it's a race against time as Daniel is in the fight of his life.
No. No.
Felt the pressure of the knife going into my chest.
No.
Probably not going to see my family again. Am I going to die?
No.
In Ashford, PC's Daniel Stride and Chris Machoek have been called to a reported burglary. which turned out to be a false alarm. But Daniel knows the caller.
It was somebody that lived on the same street as me growing up. Found out that he did suffer from psychosis, and he confirmed that he had taken about 1 gram of cocaine.
While Chris is calling an ambulance, the caller starts attacking Daniel with a knife.
No, 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 no.
He just tried to drive the knife into me. That's when I was able to get in an emergency call to raise awareness to my other colleagues.
Meanwhile, Chris is desperately searching the house for Daniel.
I called out, but I had absolutely no reply. It was complete silence.
He then turned the knife on me again, and we wrestled again.
No. 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 What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
But that time, the knife did actually drive twice into my stab-proof vest.
No. No.
And whilst I felt the pressure of the knife going into my chest, luckily my stab-proof saved me. Now, he was using all of his strength with both hands, and I was using all my strength to try and keep the knife away from me.
No. No.
Immediately after, he tried to drive the knife into my leg, and because it was on the inside of my right thigh, the femoral artery runs along there, and it was kind of around that area, so I knew that if that got severed, it's a very short bleed-out time, and you know that could have been fatal. It's as if time had slowed down. Lots of thoughts go through your head very quickly. You know, I'm probably not going to see my family again. Am I going to die? Or being so badly injured that I wouldn't be able to be a police constable anymore.
Daniel has been struggling for over 2 minutes now, and Chris is still frantically trying to find them.
What annoyed me more is just not knowing where they were, because I could have come to his aid much sooner if I knew where the location was.
I just had to use sheer strength to try and overpower him, which I eventually done. Pinned him to his bed.
Take out a knife. I'm a police officer.
Took hold of a knife blade. I'd rather much lose a finger than my life, so I took hold of the blade and I gripped that with as much strength as I could, and eventually I pried it from his fingers, working along the knife.
Take out the knife. Come on, mate. We don't need to do this. Right.
Once I got control of that, I took it and I held it behind my back, and that's when my colleague came into the room.
When I was just outside of the door, I still had heard nothing from inside. So I opened the door and I saw Daniel actually keeping the male on his side, on the bed, holding a knife behind, giving me the knife. So he just tried to stab me. So So I took the knife, took it outside of the door, just if the guy got loose, couldn't get hold of it, and went to assist Daniel, asked him how he was.
It was great relief when I saw Chris coming through the door. That really sort of like reassured me that, you know, it was going to get a little bit easier from then on.
Daniel's energy was spent. He said, I'm quite fatigued now. So I managed to, with Daniel's help, turn the male on his front, handcuff him, and we made further calls for further assistance, for further patrols to come to the site.
That's when I arrested him, and we managed to restrain him.
You're under arrest. On suspicion of assault in place. Do not have to say anything. Be made harm in defence. If you do not mention when questioned, say you later on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
Then we had to put in some aftercare as well, just to make sure he's breathing and he wasn't suffering from positional asphyxia, which Chris done really, really well. The sentimental value of knowing somebody that you used to live on the same street with, that goes out the window, because you've got to look at the risk of what's happening there and then.
Within minutes, backup officers arrive.
Immediately after the incident, I had so much adrenaline running through my body that it just purged and I broke down. And because I thought I was going to die through the incident when it was going into my chest, I just got overcome by emotion, and I just broke down at that point.
It was a hard day, more for Daniel, because he had to go through this rather than for me, who just happened to be there and was able to assist him a little bit with the obviously horrible situation he was in.
Chief Constable of Kent Police, Alan Pusely, receives more and more reports of attacks on his officers.
When I was briefed that a member of the public had a lethal weapon, a sharp knife of about 5-6 inches long, and he had, for a sustained period, tried to stab one of my officers in a confined space, and that knife was plunged into him 2 or 3 times into the body armour, horrendous. I was relieved initially that the injuries were not more severe. But when you see things like that and you hear things like truly heroic policing by Daniel on this occasion, your blood does run cold, because it could have been much worse. We deal with death. We deal with serious injury. And unfortunately, some of the deaths and the serious injury we deal with as a result of knife crime. From 2010 to 2018, we had a 152% increase in knife crime, the highest in the UK. So that was about 300 offences to about 800 offences in a yearly period, massive. I'm just really disappointed with society that criminals think it's okay to assault a police officer. No, it isn't. It just isn't. Those people who do that should be punished appropriately, and in my view, that should be prison.
The offender was convicted of attempted wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison, with an additional 3 years on licence.
Yeah, I was overwhelmed when I heard the result, but in reality, he will actually end up serving a lot less. So he's only got to do 2/3 of his sentence, which is about 6 years, and he can apply for parole in 2024. For now, he's in a safe place, yeah.
Daniel made the decision to get back to work almost immediately after the incident.
I knew that if I didn't return to policing on the following set of shifts, I probably wouldn't be policing at all. It's one of those situations, as soon as you fall off the horse, you've got to get back on it. I think, I would have lost the momentum and probably the confidence to carry on policing. So it was important to me to get back into work as soon as I could. I was quite nervous going back into work. It was quite difficult, but, I had good support around me, so that kind of really helped and eased me back in. But there's not a day that I don't go on duty, putting on my vest and not know how much risk we're in sometimes. So that's the true fact of it, really.
I thought he was a little bit withdrawn and possibly a little bit concerned. But I was always happy to go out with him, because I know I can rely on him every time.
He may be more cautious now, but Daniel is glad to be back doing what he loves. And thankfully, not all jobs are life-threatening.
I made you spill your coffee once.
Didn't, but nearly.
Yeah.
Well, looking for actually lost sheep, weren't we? Sheep on the road. And we're just flying around to prevent any accidents with sheep on the road. And I was looking at the map, and there was sudden braking.
Yeah, it was controlled braking.
Oh, of course it was. That nearly brought my breakfast out.
Despite the dangers of the job and the rise of attacks on police, Daniel and Chris are determined to continue protecting and serving the public.
There is always a thought that something could happen, but the job in itself makes the risks worth taking.
When we get in trouble, we can only rely on each other. We don't have an emergency service to call to come and help us when we're in trouble. So it's really important, you know, to have a good team and make those bonds. I'd like to thank him from the bottom of my soul and how much it meant to me, you know, him being there.
I'm actually glad it was him, because someone else possibly wouldn't be able to deal with the situation as well as he did. I'm glad he's okay. I'm really glad he's okay. He's my hero.
Like every force across the UK, Kent Police have experienced a surge of attacks on their officers. Last year, there were 1,234 attacks on Kent Police officers, the equivalent of nearly 24 per week. PC Jed Clark has been a serving officer for less than 2 years, but he already has first-hand experience of criminals attacking the police.
On a few occasions, I have been involved in assaults against myself and colleagues, but unfortunately at the moment, with the rate of crime and violent crime especially, it's a pattern that we are seeing more and more, unfortunately.
And one incident from March 2020 stands out in Jed's mind.
So this is the point where we've arrested him, got hands onto him. There's a panic button bush here. And it's when he's made off now with the knife in hand. It started like every early shift. You're kind of getting settled in for the shift. You've been given your crewings for the day, so who you're going to be working with. On this occasion, I was with Selena, my friend, and we were just nattering away in the briefing when we were given a really immediate call to exit the briefing early. And the call that we received was that there was a female and a male arguing on the street. It was just outside the town centre of Ashford, along one of the main roads. It is the very definition of a public place. There's all walks of life. There's commuters, there's children, there's people going early morning shopping, there's people going for walks. Our main priority straight away is public safety. At this stage, again, we don't know exactly what's gone on. At this point, we just know there's been an argument, so we need to keep everyone safe. We need to separate both parties of that argument, find out what's gone on. Has he done anything?
So we arrived on scene to be greeted by a member of the public who stated that there was a male being arguing with a female. He pointed out the male to me. He's probably around about 30 metres ahead of me at this point. Instinctively, went to get his attention to call him over. We had to sort of jog after him a little bit because he wasn't stopping. We need to be careful on how he reacts to us.
Yeah, mate. Do you want to stop there for me? Stop there for me.
I started engaging with him, just talking to him, letting him know that at this moment we just needed to talk to him to work out what had happened, just to ensure primarily that everyone's safe and well.
I'm not saying you haven't done anything, mate.
Yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah. Just
You've been arguing with a female? Yeah, I've been arguing,
Yeah. OK, has it just been a verbal argument?
Yeah, I just argued with her.
OK, all right. What's your name, mate? What's your name? We just got to take a few details. You're not nicked or anything. We're just talking to you, mate.
What's your name, fella?
He was very kind of up there straight away, but one part of the main job of policing is knowing how to talk to people. Once you can talk to someone, you can bring them down to a lower level without needing to resort to any force.
I'm a real man, that's why when I get hurt on here, I come to you.
Yeah, exactly, you've told us that.
While me and my colleague were speaking to the offender at this stage, the victim came up behind us and alleged that he had her phone.
Right, do you want to go back to the
Can I have a chat with you?
We'll come have...
No, don't speak to her like that. Do not...
It became apparent that he wasn't treating her with much respect, was quite abusive towards her verbally. It was at that point that Selena took her away after we got the phone back for her, as your police instinct kicks in that maybe this isn't just a verbal argument you've been told about, and there's more to it.
Excuse me?
I remained with the male. He was a very kind of trying to come across masculine, the man kind of telling me, oh, I'm a real man, I can do what I want.
Who you men? You are a man? I'm a man.
Yeah. And I could straight away tell that that was his mindset, was he was the boss and it was his way or the highway, and that she had no power in this relationship. It was very clear that he was the controlling person there.
Where are you what's your plans now? I know, did you give my colleague your date of birth?
I was just talking to him, keeping him calm. But again, at this stage, nothing to indicate to me that there's a risk. Shortly after, my colleague came back and kind of gave me the nod. And as soon as she gave me the nod, I knew he was going to be arrested for something. At this stage, I didn't know what. He was arrested for stalking and harassment.
Like, at this moment in time, you're under arrest for stalking. You do not have to say anything. It may harm. Get off.
He was just being a bit resistive to us, kind of not giving us his arms, kind of kicking off, saying, oh, what? No, this doesn't need to happen.
Stalking. You do not have to say anything. It may harm.
We both closed on him, one on each shoulder, got hands onto him. Again, not expecting any resistance at this moment, maybe just a bit of a lock-up. But at that point, when he locked up, we put him to the wall, just so we had a bit more control over him and he wasn't a risk to the public.
Excuse me, you didn't even leave a doctor. No, don't touch.
Get that knife.
No.
And it was at that point, I remember just hearing Selena shout, he's got a knife, he's got a knife. And it was at that point that he exploded upwards. His aggression went right up. And I thought that she'd been stabbed because I thought that he'd got the knife out of his pocket. But I remember her shouting, and at that point I thought, yeah, she'd been stabbed. And that was when the male turned to me with the knife. And I kind of thought, oh, I think I'm next. Everything just started to go in slow motion. You really realised the gravity of your situation. You really realised what could happen to my colleague and to myself.
Later, the offender makes a run for it, but Jed and his colleague are hot on his heels.
We need to deal with this. We can't let this male get away no matter what happens. We have got to apprehend him.
Like, at this moment in time, you're under arrest.
In Kent, PC Jed Clark and his colleague have been called to a report of a disturbance on a busy street. As they attempt to apprehend the suspect, he resists arrest and produces a knife.
No, don't touch.
Get that knife.
No, don't touch.
Get that.
We know he's got a knife. We know he's prepared to use it. This is 7:30 in the morning. We've got school kids. We've got a bus across the road that's just picked up school children. I went to try and kick him, just to try and hit him to the floor. And I remember kicking and he moved away and I followed around with a kick, and it was at this point that he made a run for it. We need to deal with this. We can't let this male get away no matter what happens. We have got to apprehend him.
Where's the knife?
I gave chase, I shouted to my colleague asking where the knife was. Did he still have it on him? Was it in his hand? Because I couldn't see it at this point. He cut across a car park. Once he reached the car park, I knew that he was going into a new build estate that had no out roads. So he was essentially running into a cul-de-sac, into a dead end. I remember walking around the corner, seeing the male turn towards me, and he looked at me, and he had the knife in his hand, and I think I was probably around about 20 metres, 15 metres away. And I remember looking at him and him holding this knife, and I thought he was just about to throw it at me, just to chuck it at me, to try and get me to back away, because it was so clear that he did not want to be caught. If he throws it, there's a chance it's going to hit here, there's a chance it could hit here, hit anywhere. So that was really heart-stopping.
Man has lost the knife.
He turned back round and he threw the knife onto the roof. I know that the knife's gone. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have another one. It doesn't mean he doesn't have something worse on him. So immediately you knew that this male needed to be put on the floor. We needed to control him.
Get down now! Get down now!
I needed backup. I needed my colleague there to help. And again, as soon as she came, we were able to get the male into handcuffs. And I remember him snapping him into those handcuffs was such a relief, because at that point I knew that he wasn't going anywhere.
No, stay there. Stay down on the floor. Get your other hand behind your back.
Say wait. What are you saying?
Right, shut up!
I'm not
Shut up! Right.
Don't hurt me.
Do you understand you're under arrest for stalking? Right? Possession of offensive weapon.
But don't hurt me.
Right, you didn't think about it when you carried on.
Although both officers were badly shaken, neither of them sustained any injury.
Following the arrest, I remember the radio squawking. You heard the sirens coming, and it was a massive relief knowing that you had units close by that were going to be able to assist.
The offender was convicted of 2 counts of assaulting an emergency worker, a malicious communications offence, 1 charge of common assault, and another charge of possessing a bladed article. He was sentenced to 1 year and 8 months in prison.
Nice, it was...
With the offender safely detained, a search begins for the knife.
There, just there, mate. Get your gloves on. 7-2, knife located.
The knife itself was a steak knife. It was quite sharp, serrated. It was about 5 inches long. The scariest part of it was how concealable it was. And if it hadn't been for Selena's reactions, we could have been dealing with something so much worse, because if that knife had come out of his pocket, we would have been in a lot of trouble. There is a moment here when that I went to kick, but I missed. So we've now got the male making off. I think the first time that I properly watched it outside of the incident, it brought it all back that happened, and something so mundane and so simple had gone so wrong so quickly. It was at this point that I came around the corner and he's facing me with the knife. You hear these stories coming from other officers, but you don't expect it to happen to you at such an early point in your service.
Jed is determined to use this experience positively and to further his career in the police.
You're always chasing perfection in this job. There's always room for development. That's something that I've always taken on board and that I've always wanted to develop and become the best police officer possible. And this has been an experience where I've really felt that I can develop from it. Violent crime is becoming more apparent in every element of criminality, and it's something that is so sobering and that we are so aware of. And you don't want any of your colleagues to go home hurt or not go home. You want them to be able to go home to their family, their children, their parents, and be able to give them a hug and just say that everything's okay.
These are the medications I have to take every day. They're a mixture of antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, and drugs for high blood pressure. So just take these. In total, I'm on 9 medications. I have to take that to maintain a normal function during the day. And that will be the same for the rest of my life.
Simon Mudge's dad was a police officer in the Met before transferring to Avon and Somerset. At the tender age of 17, Simon followed in his father's footsteps and joined the force, serving his community for 27 years.
This is what I call my police corner. So my service, my memorabilia, if you like. I've got my epaulets, which bore both my father's and my collar number. I joined the job wanting to catch all the baddies, stop all the violence, save all the children. I was the first one to get to a job, the last one to leave the neck. I enjoyed just wearing the uniform, to be honest with you. I loved it so much.
But one incident in 1997, early on in his career, changed Simon forever.
On this particular night, there was a report of 4 burglars that had broken into a shop. I run out the police station, run towards where they're supposed to be, I see these 4 people. They're 4 well-known people who are well-known to me. One particularly is violent towards police officers. So I thought, yeah, maybe me. I've got 2 years in, I'm invincible, I'm a police officer, I can do this. I went up to them and they were carrying property, so I arrested all 4 of them.
But the offenders quickly took advantage of the fact Simon was single-crewed.
I got punched in the face. I drew my baton and I struck the person who punched me on the kneecap. And I got punched from behind, so I was on the floor. And the next memory I have is looking up and seeing all 4 people kicking me on the floor, kicking into my rib cage. I came to just as help arrived. By only good fortune, my sergeant at the time came down the road and saw what was happening and called up for more units to attend. And they fled. I, being quite angry, got up and chased after the person that punched me in the face. I managed to arrest him and get him cuffed. And then I walked back to where I was assaulted and just passed out on the floor. I was taken to hospital and had a broken rib and a broken jaw.
All 4 offenders were caught and arrested, but the outcome was not what Simon had hoped for.
I was told they were going to serve custodial sentences for what they did, but they didn't. I got to Bristol Crown Court and they got 200 hours community service and 2 years probation to a man, and they all walked out laughing. That incident was pivotal to my career. I always lived with the fear of I could go to work and this could happen again. But those who know me would never have guessed, because I was always, hey, smudger, go out, let's go out and nick someone, let's go out and do this, go out and do that. So people never knew, and I never discussed it. I was back out working, but I wasn't really there.
As Simon's career progressed, he attended more and more traumatising scenes, and his mental health deteriorated.
I was diagnosed in 1997 with post-traumatic stress disorder by a psychiatrist. I was very stroppy, very moody, not really pleasant to be around. I drank excessively to numb the pain. I did that for years until it became outrageous and I just had to stop. I'm not proud of it, but that was a coping strategy. That's how I got through most days. But the demons come at night. When they come when you least expect them. I mean, I have nightmares pretty much every night of the scenes of carnage that I've had to deal with.
This was a world away from the enthusiastic young man who joined the police only 2 years previously.
I was a confident, larger than life, always taking a mickey. I'd always be there first, I'd always be there to back someone up.
But now, Simon was living a very different reality.
That incident was always at the back of my mind. This could happen again. This could happen again. This could happen again. And it did happen again.
Later, as Simon struggles to cope, another horrific incident pushes him to the limit.
I thought, that's it. This is where it ends. The only thing that I could think of was my unborn child. I thought, I'm never going to get to see her. So I just said goodbye.
In 1997, former police officer Simon Mudge was subjected to a horrific attack whilst apprehending 4 burglars on his own. The attack was so severe that it led to him being diagnosed with PTSD. But one person has helped Simon through some of his darkest days. His wife, Rowena.
Lily, come and have your hair done.
The couple met when Rowena joined the police in 2006.
You know where it is?
Good girl.
They've been married for 13 years and have 3 daughters together.
Chaotic.
Simon has always been a really warm and loving, particularly loyal person. And when I say loyal, I don't just mean to us as his family, I mean to the job that he joined as well. Whatever he sets his mind to, he's always been quite a loyal person. But yeah, just really friendly, warm, loving, a really good dad.
Look, darling.
When we first met, I had absolutely no idea that Simon had previously suffered with PTSD and just all the symptoms that come with that. He hid it really, really well. And in fact, like a lot of people with PTSD, he hid it for several years afterwards. I first became aware because I couldn't wake him up one morning and I couldn't understand why I couldn't wake him up. And I was naturally quite worried. And when I did wake him up, he told me that he'd been taking sleeping tablets because he couldn't sleep and he'd been having bad dreams, and that's how I first knew that he suffered with what I now know is PTSD, but I didn't know a lot about it at the time. I think PTSD's sort of been one of those conditions that was suffered in the background, behind closed doors, stiff upper lip, people just got on with it. So it was several years into our relationship when I really discovered that he suffered with it.
In 2003, Simon was subjected to yet another violent attack. This incident would change the course of his life forever.
Looking at it now, it's a nice place. People out enjoying themselves, walking with their dogs and what have you. You know, completely oblivious as to what happened here 17 years ago. But it's still very real for me. It was July 2003. My ex-wife was pregnant with my first child, Ella. It was a hot, sweaty, horrible day.
There was a music festival here, in the grounds of Ashton Court, a country estate in Bristol. Simon was in a unit of 5 PCs and a sergeant who were in a van patrolling the crowds.
There was obviously drinking, drug taking. What you had then was the tide was very definitely turning. The mood changed, it became very aggressive towards the police.
After a long and difficult day, Simon's shift was nearly over. But a last-minute incident would have devastating consequences.
We were sat in the van waiting to go. I think we were just relieved to finish. When a member of the public came running up to our van, banged on the side of the door, and we opened the door, and my dad's getting assaulted back in the crowd in the front of the dance tent. We get to this guy, he's surrounded by the biggest crowd I've ever seen. We were right in the middle of the crowd. There was dance music blaring out from the dance stage, so you can imagine you can't hear yourself think, let alone listen to this radio. We were talking to this man's father to establish what happened, and he basically said that everybody had taken a bit of a punt at him and hit him and what have you. So identifying the suspect was nigh on impossible. And the son then turned at me and became extremely aggressive, swearing and being abusive and shouting at me, and I was like trying to calm him down. After a couple of minutes of his abuse, I decided I wasn't going to take any more of it and just grabbed hold of him with the intention of moving him out of the crowd, taking him to the police compound and taking him away from there. However, as soon as I laid hands on him, I felt a blow across the back of my head and I was knocked unconscious. When I regained consciousness, he was underneath me and he was fighting and kicking and gouging. And the crowd surrounded us and I couldn't see anything but feet and hands and arms and kicks and punches. The crowd got a bit closer, they started chucking cans and bottles at us. The old kick, the old punch would come out. At that point, I was urinated on by someone. There are no words I can use to describe that. Humiliating, yes it was. It was disgusting. And it was quite possibly the worst thing that I've ever had done to me. And then from somewhere in the crowd, we were sprayed with CS spray. I couldn't hear anything, couldn't see anything. All I wanted to do was just hang on to my prisoner. The density of people, literally falling over each other to get at us. They were tightly packed. There was no way through it. There was no way over the top of it. There was just no way that was going to happen. So I had to stay where I was. I felt completely alone, at the mercy of a baying crowd that would quite happily see my blood. And at that point, I thought I was going to die. I said inside my head, "Goodbye, Ella," because I never thought I was going to see my unborn child. And that lived with me for a very long time. I'd had several times in the job where I've been assaulted quite badly, and I've always thought I'll come out the other end of it. But on that day, I thought that was it. I thought my 9 lives had run out. Eventually, and it seemed like a dog's age away, I heard the sound of 2-tone sirens, which means there was someone coming to help us. And the crowd cleared, and I was grabbed hold of by the back, and it was my skipper who put me on board the van, and we were driven off to the police post, which is literally sort of seconds away. I can see it like it was yesterday, but I've got to be grateful for the fact that on leaving the police, I received quite a substantial amount of trauma counselling, which helped me deal with things like this.
Although Simon was struggling with PTSD, his career was flourishing and he received numerous commendations for his work. But after attending countless more harrowing scenes, his nightmares and flashbacks became worse and more frequent.
Just before Poppy was born, so in 2011, that's when he really started suffering really badly with the symptoms of PTSD, and sort of since then it's really been quite a roller coaster of sort of symptoms and conditions, really.
It just made me cautious. At times it made me aggressive because I didn't want to go through the things I'd been through again. I would sweat, I'd shake, any loud noise would trigger me. My cortisol, my sort of fear chemical was so much in my brain that I was in fight or flight all the time. There was never any rest.
In 2014, Simon realised he couldn't carry on like this and once again went to see a psychiatrist.
He diagnosed me with severe and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Then the only complexity being the amount of exposure I've had to traumatic incidents. It all began to disintegrate. The day I broke, I got to work after being advised not to go in, and something happened at work. And I just marched up to the inspector's office and said, I don't want to be a cop anymore. And he was a very kindly man, sort of sat me down, wrote a report and said, basically sent me home. So I don't expect to see you again. And that was the hardest thing I've ever done, because I loved being a police officer so much. It was my entire life.
Andy Roebuck is the chair of Avon and Somerset Police Federation and has become good friends with Simon since hearing about what he's been through.
How's it all going?
I'm all right, mate, yeah, not too bad.
Simon's a great person, and I think he has a real story to tell.
It's going all right, touch wood.
There's things in there that can happen to anyone within the police. We've got to learn from that, because I have to be honest, I think as an organisation we've made mistakes. I would like to think that if Simon was in those positions that he was those few years ago, that actually now he wouldn't have had to be shown the door.
Yeah,
We've missed an opportunity. You know, we've got a really passionate guy who wants to be a police officer, who was doing all sorts of wonderful things, who was proactive, who was keen, enthusiastic, who was known as much as who would go out and make those arrests, and that's what people want, as far as, or one of the things that people want as police officers. And probably as an organisation, we took our eye off of that. We have to make sure that people like Mudgers don't fall through the net again. You know, if they are broken, let's repair them. Let's take responsibility to build them and make them and their family a better, stronger unit.
When you're a police officer, you have standing in the community. You can do things, you can help people, you can have an impact. All of a sudden, you go from that to civilian, and it's like, I grieved it. I miss it desperately. I miss it desperately. There you go, fella.
Back in Somerset, Simon Mudge is learning to cope with a very different life outside of the police force, with the support of his loving family.
I mean, I'm better than I was. I am better than I was, and I've got techniques that I use to ground myself when things get on top. I have to have a routine. I clean the house, I take the kids to school. Any change in my routine really upsets me. Little victories for me is going training. I weight train twice a week. Just increasing the weight you can lift or having a good session, that's a win for me. Watching my girls grow up and become young ladies is you know, a huge one for me. Yeah, they do take care of me, and they mean the world to me, all of them.
That's good. Now I'm going to drive a car.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I think mainly is my wife providing the steady life, steady and stable environment for us all.
I have to remember that it's not personal. So his PTSD is not about me, it's not about our relationship, it's about what he's experienced previously. So I do have to remember that, because sometimes he can get quite personal. If he's in that place where he's feeling really low and his emotions are sort of taking him over, or he's having a flashback, it's not about me, it's about the trauma. Ultimately, I love Simon, and I have always loved him, and you know, it is now part of who he is. It's part of the man that, you know, I spend my life with.
Happy now? I've been honest with the girls, because Poppy's 8 now, Lily's 10, Ella's 16, so I've explained to them all that I have PTSD, and that sometimes, you know, I'll be a bit moody or a bit down.
We don't tell them everything. I don't believe children need to know everything, but they do understand that Daddy is different to other daddies.
And this is your life. This is your menstrual state. This is the mum, Polly, Oppie. This is me. This is someone you arrested. This is your pill, your weights, and a police helmet.
It's so insightful of the girls, you know, and so thoughtful. I love it. What they do is really special. You know, it just goes to show how much they think about things.
Now that I'm 10, I know what actually is going on, and I love Daddy so much. He's the best dad I could ever want.
I don't know what I would do without him. He's always been a special dad, because there's no other dad like him.
There's no one that can pull off a t-shirt like that.
If something's wrong with Dad, then it doesn't work to try and hide it, because we will always know if something's wrong.
But you always find out, we always find out when you have fish and chips.
Yeah.
You do always find out, that's right.
Find out.
For now, Simon is working on rediscovering his place in the world.
My hope is as time goes on and as the girls get older, that he will realise that life outside the police service is just as important, and that he can have a fulfilled life. He's got a purpose that isn't just being a police officer. That's my hope for him.
Things are improving, definitely improving. I don't feel like I live from day to day anymore. For years and years and years, my name was Mudger. That persona carried me through the police service, but now I'm Simon. And it doesn't sound like anything at all, but for me it's quite a major thing. You know, I'm not that person anymore. I'm just a man, a father, a husband. You know, that's what I am. That's who I am these days. And I'm more than comfortable with that.
John King and Kevin Mulligan have been friends for 40 years. As well as growing up together, they both chose the same career path.
You right, son? Yeah, good.
I was a bricklayer for 6 years, and my dad was a police officer, and I can remember one Christmas coming home. I hadn't laid any bricks, didn't have any money, hadn't really thought about the police. My dad said, "Why don't you give it a try?" He loved being in the police.
We grew up in the same kind of town, had the same kind of interests, music, same circle of friends really. And so from early teens, we knew each other. Then John joined the police, and 5 years after that, I joined the police.
If you spend 8 hours in a car with somebody, you spend more time with them than you'd spend with your wife. It's a support network as well, isn't it? You'll go to a job, somebody's been badly injured or, you know, something to do with a child, and you support each other, don't you?
This friendship was a huge comfort to them both during the aftermath of the most distressing event of their careers.
We got really close from doing the job we loved. There's a connect and a bond that...
Yeah, there's a bond that...
Because you've been through it. You've been through something that no one else should have to go through.
It was October 2014, and John and Kevin were on a night shift.
That's the balcony there, isn't it?
Yep. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
It's weird sitting here, isn't it?
Yeah. I do remember looking over the edge of that balcony and thinking, I need to jump off here.
A call came in to attend a residential address.
He was a mental health patient who hadn't been taking his medication. His family had rung in, worried about him. And they couldn't gain access to his flat.
In these cases, no one really wants to use force unless it's absolutely necessary. John and myself were standing on the landing of this flat and communicating with the guy that was behind the door.
We were telling him we weren't there to hurt him, and we weren't there to hurt him. We were there to get him, get him mental health help.
We'd got to the point where communications and dialogue had proven fruitless. So we took the decision to force entry.
I hit the door a couple of times, but it was a plastic door and it just wasn't going through. So I stepped back and then Kev started hitting the door.
It's a UPVC door, it's new. So rather than go for the lock or the hinges, there's a panel in the centre. So I thought if I could create a void in the panel, we could at least start some dialogue with the individual. And we meant business, really, in his best interest to secure him out.
Kevin smashed a small hole in the door, but before they could begin a conversation, things spiralled out of control.
Almost immediately, John says, "I've been shot." And I'll never forget those words, "I've been shot."
I just felt just a crashing blow on my right eye. I knew I'd been shot in the face and I could feel the blood on my face, and I knew I had to get off the balcony.
We had to get him past the door, by which time it had obviously got a big hole in it.
And he was still firing.
He was still firing out at us. We had to get past that and get John down the steps.
I'd thought about jumping off the balcony, but I realised that I was going to get possibly, worse injuries jumping off.
Meanwhile, the gunman shot again through the hole in the door.
And he shot again, and a second shot, as I turned to the side to go down the steps, hit me just to the side of my left eye and glanced, luckily, across my eyeball and didn't go into my eye socket.
Fortunately for John, an ambulance was already on the scene.
I can remember a young lad, a young paramedic, jumping into the back, looking at me and saying, he was, "Oh my God, oh my God." And I can remember saying to him, "You tell me that I look all right." And he said, "You look all right, you look all right."
John had been shot in the eye with a rubber ball from a paintball gun. Now Kevin had to make sure that no one else got hurt.
John went off on the ambulance. Now that left me in a situation because I've still got a duty to protect the public and protect the guy that's in the flat. But it's serious business now.
Did you call for firearms then, did you?
Yeah, so we shouted up on the radio what had gone on. Team came, the instructions they gave him, he abided by, and he came out very calm. It was over very quickly.
John was rushed to the hospital as quickly as possible. At home, his wife Lisa, also a police officer, knew nothing about the incident.
I was at home with the children. John had gone to work, a night shift as always, and there was a knock on the door, which everybody kind of dreads, don't they, in the middle of the night. And being a police officer and then opening the door to a police officer, I kind of knew it was bad news.
That's not anything that any of us ever want to do. Knock on the front door of a colleague, of a friend, and tell their partner or loved one that there's been an incident of that magnitude.
He'd been at the scene, so he would have seen that it wasn't very pleasant to look at. So he kind of tried to prepare me a little bit. He said, "Well, we really don't know how bad his eye is. We really don't know whether he's going to lose his eye."
I don't think it necessarily sunk in to start with. And it was only when I was in the car when we were going over to Birmingham Eye Hospital, where he was taken to, that it kind of started sinking in.
So I got a little bit worked up then, thinking, because obviously he'd gone in his eye, and I'm thinking, is his face going to be all injured? And just thinking the worst, really. When we walked through the door, he had covering over it. So immediately I'm thinking, oh, how bad is this? But at that time, we didn't know the severity of what had happened.
Later, doctors struggled to save John's sight.
The damage was far worse than they'd expected, and there was probably not a lot of chance of me being able to see through it.
In Cannock, John King has been shot in the eye as he tried to help a man suffering with severe mental health issues. Unknown to John and his colleagues, the man was armed.
I knew I'd been shot in the face, and I could feel the blood on my face.
And I'll never forget those words. I've been shot.
While he was rushed to hospital, John's wife Lisa was contacted with the news.
He said, "Well, we really don't know how bad his eye is. We really don't know whether he's going to lose his eye, and I think you need to come to the hospital."
John was transferred to the Birmingham Midland Eye Centre.
They operated on me the first full day I was there, and what they'd done is they'd managed to stitch my battered eyeball back together. They got everything that goes inside an eyeball, like your lens and everything, and they put it all back in and then just stitched it back together. They had said to me, though, the damage was far worse than they'd expected, and there was probably not a lot of chance of me being able to see through it.
John can't remember a lot of that week because of the medication that he was on. I obviously was at home at night time with the children while he was in hospital, and he'd phone me at 3 in the morning just sobbing and really upset. But he can't remember doing that. It was more traumatic than he perhaps remembers at the time, but it wasn't very pleasant to hear that.
John spent the next few months at home, hoping his eye would heal and that he might regain some of his vision.
The eye was really painful. It was smaller than my other eye, and also it was just white, really.
I was having to help him with his medication and put eye cream in and stuff like that because he couldn't do everything himself. He's awake most nights in pain, which again he can't remember, but he was. So of course I'm awake.
And then I had a lot of eye tests just to see if I'd got any vision at all, but nothing had come back. I then made the decision, because it was painful, I decided just to have the eye removed because the pain was just, it wasn't going away.
Once John's mind was made up, surgery was arranged immediately. Using cutting-edge technology, doctors placed a hand-painted eye into John's eye socket.
I think the way that he helped himself initially was through a video diary of the emotions.
I've been out of surgery for about 3 hours. I've just spoke to my surgeon who carried it out, and he's saying it went really, really well. They've removed most of my blind eye, put the old ping pong ball in, they put a cover on it. He's saying it looks shape-wise great, which I'm happy about, and I'm over the moon. And then what they do is they put a prosthetic implant in, the same shape as an eyeball, and then they sew the skin around it. And that just means that my eye moves. It doesn't move as much as my good eye, but it's close enough.
John now has a routine to help maintain his prosthetic eye. A painless procedure that involves removing it and keeping it clean.
It's supposed to be polished about every 2-3 years, but I just find that as long as I keep it and myself clean, it's been fine.
When he takes that eye out, he's unrecognisable, you know. And there are times, because of comfort, that he would like to take it out, because it is like having a foreign body in your body, really. So he would like to take it out, but then he doesn't like how he looks. So it's sort of a catch-22 there.
The loss of John's eye has had a huge impact on his life.
Socially, he will avoid crowds at all costs because he just feels a nuisance, and he'll say that.
If I don't see you, I don't move enough, so I do bump into people, which can be a pain. So crowds are a bit of a game.
He gets all disorientated if he's pushed around and stuff, and that doesn't help his mood. So it has been quite stressful in some places to be around him.
My little lad, who was 5 at the time, it hit him quite hard and his school suffered a bit.
There was a time that he didn't want to be in the same room as John. So trying to juggle that and trying to get him to bond again with Daddy was difficult, you know, it's emotional.
John's son Will, who is now 10, can still recall the trauma of his dad being injured.
It was quite shocking, really, to believe that he was alive, because I'd gone without seeing him. Apart from my news from Mom, I'd thought he was dead. I was really sad about my dad and always worried that something would happen to him, as he'd just been injured. What if something happened again, and what if he wouldn't get better this time? What if he wouldn't wake up again?
Two years after the incident, John and his team attended the trial of the offender. In a finding of fact hearing due to the offender's mental ill health, the jury found the offender had caused grievous bodily harm and had been in possession of a prohibited firearm. he was given an indefinite hospital order.
I've got no animosity. I met his mum at the court case and put my arm around her. She's had a lifetime of this.
He was poorly, mentally he was poorly, and although his family were fantastic around him, and I know that, having met them, there's only so much they can do to make him take medication, which he hadn't done. So it was unfortunate for him that he'd got himself in that situation.
But you know about the guy that did it, that he wasn't taking his medication, that he didn't mean to hurt anybody.
And I forgive him. You forgive him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see any reason why, like, other people shouldn't forgive him, because he couldn't help it. He wasn't in control at that point. Therefore, it's not his fault.
Another person who was deeply affected by the incident was John's friend and colleague, Kevin Mulligan.
I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
No. But it could have been a lot worse. That's how cops look at it, isn't it?
Could have been a lot worse.
Cops, it could have been a lot worse. He could have got just more than me.
There isn't a day goes by I don't think about it. There isn't a day go by I feel guilty because it wasn't me that got shot, because I was at the front. I suppose that's just something I'm going to have to live with, really.
As John and Kevin revisit the scene of the incident, John feels he's gained some closure. Having now retired, this is the place where he carried out his final policing duties.
It's taken me back to a previous life, but a life that I loved, because, of course, from the night of the shooting, I never went back to it. And I loved the police, absolutely loved every second of it. So I feel sad that it all came to an end then, but, you know, life moves on.
It wasn't easy to see John coming to the end of his career in such circumstances, because he was job through and through.
I just think it's a shame that I'm not, that he'll never remember, really, as he grows up, about me being a police officer.
It's quite vivid in my memory.
Well, that's good.
Your days as a police officer, so I don't think I'll forget it anytime soon.
You can't live your life on regrets. You've just got to accept it. Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully.
We're here to tell the tale.
But John has managed to find a new passion in his life.
I think playing the guitar saved me, really, because that was something that I'd always done. It's a great big stress relief and comforter to be able to lose yourself with an instrument. When I got out of hospital, I'd actually bought myself like a little recording desk, and I wrote an album in about 2 weeks. Been writing ever since, and that's from 20 years of not writing anything. So you know, it wasn't worth losing an eye for, but it really has helped me.
In all of it, John's probably the only person that's kept the optimism up, you know, and he's been the person that's lifted everybody's spirits around it. I really admire him for that.
Cheers, pal.
Yeah, cheers, good.
I love him like a brother. That's not going to change, and we miss him terribly. But what he did for us as a service, and certainly as a team, won't be forgotten, and we've been carrying on in his memory in that way.
I love him. I really do love you, and if anything happened to you, even if it was just like a little
splinter,
I'd still really, really worry about you.
Well, you don't need to worry about me, and I love you, mate. You know I do.
Yeah, I love you too.
Sergeant Simon Kempton and PC Charlotte Harvey have been through an ordeal which has bonded them for life.
It can't have been 10, 12 yards from here that he did just pull his car up, half in the carriageway, half on the verge.
And we had a decision to make then, because the vehicle was dark, he had no lights on. And I just thought at some point someone's going to come up behind him and drive into the back of him.
It's awful watching somebody else be hurt just for doing their job. It's horrible.
Being assaulted should never be a part of my job.
Assaults on officers are not only tough on the victims, but also on their families.
Hello, Charlie.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, and you? Yeah, good. Yeah. Hello, darling. Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm gonna steal a pasty.
You're going to borrow a pasty.
Acquire.
Being the parent of a police officer, there's always that bit of background worry. Will something happen? Will something go wrong? But you can't live your life like that.
Being the partner of a police officer is also a worry.
Pasta's probably done now. I think the effect on the partner often gets forgotten as well because people tend to concentrate on the officer.
It's quite a scary thing to go through on the receiving end when I don't know what I'm dealing with. So
The incident that had such an impact on Charlotte and Simon occurred in October 2017 in Poole. And Charlotte had been in the job for less than a year.
Crewed up with a young in-service officer who I'd never worked with before, and that's not unusual. It's always quite nice.
First time I ever met Simon was that shift. Whole police is a bit like a family anyway. It wasn't like we were treating each other like strangers.
And we're driving down an A road, so it's a busy old road normally, but it's pitch black. It's only single lane in each direction, and there's no lighting. And we come up behind a vehicle, quite a dark vehicle, and it's not got any lights on, and it's going really slowly.
The car was quite obviously not being driven either correctly, either the driver was distracted.
Part of me thought the driver might be drunk, part of me thought they might be lost. But Charlotte called up for a marked car to come and assist us.
And the car just stopped, basically. It pulled up on the verge, stopped. The driver got out.
So I set off the blue strobe lights so that he knows we're police. And I say to Charlotte, wait here a second, I'll just jump out and see what's going on. Before I've even opened my door, the guy's out of the driver's door and he's gone round the front of his car and he's put the bonnet up. So I quickly nip and I join him and I'm stood next to him. Vividly remember, I'm actually on his right-hand side and he's got his hand up, holding the bonnet up, and he's looking and says, the engine keeps cutting out, the engine keeps cutting out. And he was slurring his words. He really was slurring his words.
Got out the car myself, leaving everything on so that we were still lit up, and joined Simon at the side of the car.
So I take the decision then I'm going to have to arrest him because I think he's unfit to drive. So I take hold of him and said, look, I can't let you drive off, mate. I'm going to have to put you under arrest. And at that point, he reacted quite poorly.
He quickly became violent, attacking both officers at once.
It's a real blur, and I can remember certain bits, flashes.
Both of us were dragged to the floor at points. We dragged him to the floor. He got up, he was putting in punches, elbows.
And then he brings his hands up under my coat and his thumbs found my eyeballs straight away. And his fingers were on the back of my head, so I couldn't pull back.
It just didn't appear to be stopping anything. I deployed my parva, didn't appear to have any effect on him whatsoever.
So I just punched him as hard as I could in his sort of torso. Unfortunately, he lets go.
The driver wants to get back behind the wheel, but Simon moves quickly.
Simon put his arm in the car and took out the keys and threw them.
And then Charlotte and I, still at his driver's door, he's trying to kick his way through his door to get to us. So we're just putting our weight onto the door. And I remember saying to Charlotte, this is all right, we'll just keep him here and then, everyone else will turn up in a minute and then job done.
But with only 2 officers and the car unlocked, the driver manages to get out through the passenger door.
So I've gone to put my weight across his torso, and I remember thinking, I don't want him to spit at me or bite me. So I've turned his face away from me. Charlotte is on his other side, and Charlotte goes to put her weight on his left-hand side, and he punched Charlotte.
I had my hair up, much like I do today, in a bun. He just managed to get a good grip on it and just pulled me backwards.
And again, both of his hands reach up and his thumbs again go into my eyes.
All I could hear was Simon saying, he's got my eyes, he's got his thumbs in my eyes. I was just trying to hit him, kick him, do anything to stop him doing what he was doing to Simon.
Charlotte's tactics work, and she manages to force the assailant to release Simon, but they immediately face another danger as the man runs into the road in the line of oncoming traffic.
So Charlotte and I run into the road, push him out the way of the car, and we manage to, I mean, in my mind's eye, when I think back, it's a split second before the car passes us. So then he punches me again and then runs into the road a second time.
The second time he ran into the road, I remember thinking, oh gosh, now what? Like, is he going to get hit? Are we going to get hit? All I remember thinking is that the only line of defence I've got left is my baton. I'd never used it before. I've never used it since.
And I remember thinking that car's going really, really quick. I'm not going to get there in time. And just as I was thinking, we're both going to get hit by this car, it just screams to a halt. I didn't realise that it was a police car.
Simon and Charlotte's backup had arrived.
And then the door opened and a really authoritative, commanding voice shouted, "Taser, taser, get on the floor." To the point it was so commanding and authoritative, I nearly went, oops, no, him, right, okay. And the guy, brilliantly, just went, stopped, and he sort of lay on the floor.
The incident was over almost as quickly as it began.
Once he was on the floor and got cuffs on him, I think I just sat there for a second, just trying to get my breath back, and then loads of other units started to arrive from almost out of nowhere. So I was very happy for people to be there.
I had bruising on my torso, my ribs, from where the guy kicked me, some bruising around my face, and particularly around my eyes, where he'd gouged my eyes.
Simon then made a phone call to his partner, Alex, who he had only been seeing for a year at the time.
It was quite a weird experience to get that call because all of a sudden it was your mind flips because you suddenly think, you're trying to picture what's happened and trying to understand it from previous experience, but I've never had that before. I just didn't even cross my mind about the sorts of things he could be stepping into because it's not something we'd really talked about. So it wasn't really until he called me to say that he was in hospital because of something that happened that I really had any understanding of what that feels like.
Charlotte also called her mother after the incident.
It was definitely quite flippant. Oh, no, it was just something that happened at work. Yeah, no, we're fine, you know, I got punched in the face and my hair pulled and, you know, that once the incident was resolved, you know, we went to the A&E and we were told as much as, she wanted to tell us. I suppose for her, if she wasn't making it a big deal, then we weren't going to make it a big deal.
The driver was charged with 2 counts of assaulting a police officer, failure to provide a specimen for analysis, and driving whilst disqualified. He was jailed for 4 months, ordered to pay £300 in compensation, and banned from driving for 36 months.
If it was to ever happen again, I'd be quite happy to have Simon by my side.
I came away with really minor injuries, very, very lucky, only because Charlotte was there, and Charlotte was an absolute warrior, so thank you, mate.
Since the incident, Charlotte is more conscious of taking care of herself and taking time out.
We can't really expect to look after other people, and we need to make sure we look after ourselves, and my way of dealing with that is sport and exercise and trying to look after my body in a healthy way.
Charlotte's mum is also a huge support to her.
I haven't seen this album before. I've seen like all of our albums, but I've not seen this one.
Haven't you? Do you remember when you wanted to become a police officer?
Not close, no.
But you remember always saying you wanted to be one?
Yeah.
Very compassionate, considerate, but she does like to be in charge, so it didn't surprise me when she wanted to be a police officer.
It's so beautiful.
For Simon, the incident has given his partner, Alex, insight into the dangers of his job.
You need to think about how it affects you as well. A bit open with you about what sort of work I'm doing, I guess.
I probably didn't really have that much of an understanding until that point when that happened. I think it was a bit of a reality check for me, really, I guess. So I would naturally feel quite nervous about you going out on patrol. But I'll get used to it.
But there was some good news for Simon and Charlotte and their families. Their efforts were rewarded with a Bravery Award.
So proud of Simon when he was nominated. I mean, I remember he called me. I think Simon, again, the nature of this man, played it down a little bit. He was a bit like, wow, you're not going to believe it, but I've been nominated for this Bravery Award. I think he deserves a huge amount of recognition. Yeah, I'm really proud of him.
I feel very honoured that I was so young in service and nominated for such a big award. And then to find out I was going up to London, going to Downing Street, and then when I told my parents, they were just so excited about it.
I was at the front of the shop, and once you got off the phone, oh my goodness, Andy, this is a really big deal.
I look back on it with a lot of happy memories. I've since lost my dad that came to the awards, and you know, he was very proud, and he came to number 10 with me. If he was proud of you, he'd tell you. So he did. No, good man.
Police officers, they'll go running into a situation and put themselves right in the danger line. And they need to know that society's got their back.
Well, I just think that the things that we do and other colleagues do and how brave they are, I think it goes to show what type of person a police officer is.
Across the UK, thousands of assaults on ambulance staff are reported each year, and the figures continue to rise. This is a shocking reality for a service that is called out to help people and provide often life-saving treatment. Richard Bentley has been with the Yorkshire Ambulance Service since 2005 and a paramedic since 2009.
Absolutely, best way to be. I think when you're a child, most children want to do police, fire and ambulance. And like most children, it was what I wanted to do when I was younger.
Richard knows all too well the dangers of his job, with attacks on his service sadly becoming a common occurrence.
With colleagues, it's something that everybody's unfortunately becoming used to. Within Yorkshire, we've had 4 attacks per week, physical assaults on our staff within the last 12 months. This is where I was when the gentleman came at me with the knife. Just on one of the streets on the right-hand side, just down here. I've been back to this area several times since that incident happened, and if I feared it, it would stop me from doing my job. So you just need to continue and get on with things.
In 2014, Richard was single-crewed on a relatively quiet shift.
I was on standby and got given an emergency call to attend a residential address. When I got given the details, there wasn't much information on the screen. I'd been given the address, that it was a male, and that he was bleeding from his hand or from his wrist. So I drove to the emergency. It took me about 5 or 7 minutes to get there. And when I arrived, there was nobody on the street, and it had been passed to me as an outside of address. I started to notice that there was drops of blood along the path. I followed the blood down the path and came to the door. The door had glass panels in it, and one of the glass panels had been smashed. I could hear raised voices inside the property. So I pushed the door open, stood outside and shouted in, "Ambulance, anybody there?" A gentleman appeared and I could see all the way down his arm he was bleeding heavily. I asked him what had gone on. He explained to me that he'd put his hand through the door. It was an accident. The gentleman was of Eastern European descent and he was there with his female partner. She was also Eastern European. The way that the two people were speaking to each other, they were speaking in their own language, but the tone became quite raised and their eye contact with each other and the body language, the way they're interacting, just changed. This changed while I was dressing the gentleman's arm and putting a bandage around it. I finished bandaging his arm and the tension between both parties was increasing, the volume was getting louder. So I turned and was chatting to the female in the property, asking if she was okay. The gentleman had just left my side and headed back into the kitchen. And it was at this point that I noticed the look on her face. And then she screamed and turned and ran and just grabbed hold of a full armchair and flipped it upside down and got herself huddled on her hands and knees underneath in the seat area, with the hands out underneath, holding onto the armchair, holding the armchair above her. And as I turned to look, the gentleman was coming down the kitchen with a kitchen knife above his head. At that second, I was absolutely frozen with fear. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. My mind was doing so many different things, trying to work out what I should do, that I was unable to do anything. To walk into a situation like that, it escalated so quickly, and I had no pre-warning. And I think that's what scared me most. The fact of I found myself in a situation that I'd ultimately put myself there and not understood the consequences as I walked in. He comes down, barges past me. He gets hold of the edge of the chair and he's trying to pull the chair off his partner as she's clinging on for dear life. I remove myself from the property and I activate my panic button. Ask for police assistance. Stood outside and I can hear her inside screaming. I know that I've asked for the police. I'm now in a real quandary. I took the decision to re-enter the property. I did that knowing that at that time I'm re-entering the property, but I'm stood at the doorway, so at least I've got some kind of escape. This woman's trapped underneath the chair and she's got no kind of escape. So I re-entered and I started shouting, screaming, just making as much noise as possible, just to try and give myself some presence in the property, just to try and scare the gentleman. I kept shouting at him, "Put the knife down. The police are coming. Put the knife down." I was shouting and screaming that much that the neighbours started to come out from around the street. They started to walk down the driveway to see what was going on. I started to get really worried about their safety as well. So I started to tell them, "You need to move back. Go back home, ring the police and tell them what you've seen." I wanted to ensure that the police knew what was going on and that they were aware that this incident was still ongoing. After 2 or 3 minutes of being in the property, shouting and screaming at him, finally he put the knife down. He just turned and looked at me and he walked out of the property into the garden. I managed to slam the door and lock the door behind him, locking him outside. So now only me and his partner were inside the property. But he was now stood in the garden, looking straight through the window, back at his girlfriend. And I start to become extremely fearful that he's now going to smash the window and get back inside the property. Shut the curtains of the window. That way, just to try and think, if he can't see her, he might not continue the argument. He might not continue banging. It probably took about 7 or 8 minutes for the police to get there. It felt a lot longer to me, and I'm sure it did to his partner. Once I heard the police siren, I reopened the curtains and we could look out. It was at that point I saw the police entering the garden with their tasers drawn, shouting at the gentleman, telling him to get down on the ground. He complied with what the police were asking, and he got down, and the police arrested him in the garden.
The offender was sentenced to 9 months in prison for a fray. Thanks to Richard's actions and quick thinking, both he and the female escaped unharmed. But the outcome could easily have been very different.
There's never a situation that I can see where a paramedic or ambulance staff or fire staff should ever be assaulted. We just come to work to do our job. We just come to work to come and help people. You pick up the phone and you ring us. You ask us to come and attend. And then when we get there, we're being attacked. That's just not right.
Richard was back to work the day after the incident. And although more cautious when attending domestic scenes, he finds solace with his crew.
It becomes a peer-to-peer support, lots of mess room chat. That's the way that we deal with things. We sit in a mess room and we try to chat to each other and we offload. These people doing the same job, they understand the situations you're going in. They can relate to it very easily. And that's the kind of offloading ability that is the best that we find with crew to crew and peer to peer, having those chats and letting them know what's been going on and how it's made you feel.
With family though, distressing events at work have to be handled delicately.
I try to not tell Mum that much. I know she'd worry a bit more if she knew everything that went on. So I shield her a little bit from it. Tell her that things have gone on, but maybe not tell her the full extent of everything that's happened. I think she'll always worry. And I think the more that she sees incidents on TV and on the news of assaults on paramedics and ambulance staff and other emergency service workers, it makes her more fearful for when I'm going out to work.
Even though there are risks in this job, there's one thing that keeps Richard turning up for work.
Knowing that 999 calls keep coming in and that people out there still do need us. It's not everybody that attacks us, and it is a small percentage. Unfortunately, an ever-increasing percentage, but it's still small. And the reason that I do this job is because I want to help people. So actually, what helps me get over it is going back out on the next shift, not letting that attack put me off, not letting that attack hinder me, moving forward and going on and helping the next people that I can.